And so if this material can be sensitive, it can be hard to hear sometimes. We're not going to go into anything too graphic or too detailed, but obviously do what you need to do. Take a break, take a walk, ask questions, and we're here at the end if you need, if you have questions or anything you want to talk about afterward as well. Okay, so just making sure like you take care of yourself throughout the talk. So our objective for today is very simple, basically just to understand what is child sexual abuse, what to look for, how to minimize opportunities, how to recognize the signs. This is very introductory, as I mentioned. We're not going to go into detail about a lot of things, and it's definitely not inclusive, right? So this isn't everything you need to know about how to prevent child sexual abuse. It's just a foundational lesson. But we're a preventative organization, and I think the best preventative tool is education, and so that's what we're doing, right? We're just starting the conversation. I know that for me, growing up here, we never talked about anything like this, right? There are a lot of topics that we talk about now that we never used to, and so we're already making progress by having these conversations from now. And just like most things in education, this is not like a one and done. Again, like this is not like, don't say like, okay, I know everything I need to know. It's like, it's continual. And so you guys are now in the servants prep class. In servants, once you're in a classroom, there's going to be other trainings and other things that you'll go through. Again, it's continued education. So first, why this matters. So as servants in the church, right, like we're role models. Like you serve in summer camp, you serve in all these different ways. Even if you're not in a classroom, you're still serving. And I think a big thing, especially having kids in the church, is that they look up to all of you, right? They see you dressed as deacon, they see you serving, they see you at summer camp, they look up to you, their role models. So for a lot of these kids, like you are their safe space, right? You are their role models. You are someone that they might turn to if they have a problem, big or small, right? So you guys are really important in the church. You guys are pillars of the church. And so that's why it's really important that you guys know this, and know how to keep children safe. And also, there is also like a shared responsibility, right? Like we're all one congregation, we're one body in Christ, and we need to make sure we take care of each other, right? So whether you're directly serving or not, we all have a responsibility to keep our eyes open and be educated on this, because we all have an impact, and we all play a role. Also, for the purposes of this presentation, I'm gonna use the word servant a lot. The definition I'm going to use for this is basically anyone 18 and up who's serving in any capacity, right? So whether that's summer camp, hymns class, a classroom, outings, retreats, right? Whatever it is, that's a servant. So for the purposes of this is what I'm going to be referring to, okay? Any questions so far? No? Okay, great. Okay, so now I'm going to set the stage and just give you guys some facts and give you some, some myths and misconceptions about child sexual abuse. So first, what is child sexual abuse? A very basic introduction definition. Basically, any interaction between a child and adult in which the child is used for sexual stimulation, okay? So it's any interaction. It can include touching, it can include non-touching. So touching is the obvious things, touching any private areas, basically, right, that's the mostly touching. And then non-touching could be things like watching someone, having someone undress, making someone watch something inappropriate, right? That all qualifies as child sexual abuse. Abusers use a lot of things to like coerce kids, basically. So they could use physical force, they could coerce them, they can manipulate them, they can use fear, and we'll get into some of those things later on. They can threaten them, they can threaten their family. So it can look a lot of different ways, but the basic thing is that they're using persuasion and manipulation. Those are the two big things to keep that child engaged and keep the secrecy going. There's also grooming, which again we're going to get into later, but basically it's like a slow process of having the kid like slowly moving them towards abuse. So it doesn't always start off as something huge. It starts off something little and little to see what they can get away with, and then it progresses into something larger. And the big thing about this is there's no community, there's no religion, there's no country that is immune from this, unfortunately. It is widespread, it is all over, it happens everywhere, unfortunately, right? So I just want to make sure that you guys, you know that no one is immune from it, unfortunately. It's something that is widespread. So we're going to play a little true or false game, okay? So I'm going to show something up here, and I want you to say true or false, okay? First statement, child sexual abuse is a rare experience. True or false? False, correct. You are right, my friend. So, child sexual abuse, as I just said, is not rare, unfortunately. No community is immune from it. These are the statistics, so 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 13 boys, and honestly, I actually think these numbers are much higher. So we think that it's much higher because a lot of people don't disclose. So a lot of people will experience it and never report it because by nature it's based in secrecy and fear. So it is not rare. It's actually very common and it's widespread. Next statement. A child is most likely to be sexually abused by a stranger. Stranger danger. False. Okay, good. So the fact is 91% of cases of child sexual abuse, that they know the abuser, okay? They know the person. There's a lot of reasons for that. So I think when perpetrators are looking for a child or looking to abuse, they look for two big things, which is access and opportunity. So you think about like the circle of trust, right? Adults are looking for kids that they have access to, kids that trust them, kids that the families trust them, right? And so you look for that access and opportunity and then you perpetrate. So that's a big reason why a lot of the abuse happens with people that you know, with people who are in the victim's circle of trust. And so that's why it's even more important that we talk about this and we educate people to know what to look for. Okay, next. Preschoolers do not need to know about child sexual abuse and would be frightened if educated about it. What do you think? False. False, yeah, say it loud, guys. False, yes, okay. So there is a thought that, well, I don't want to tell my kid about this because it's scary and they're going to be scared and, you know, I don't know what it's going to lead to, right? You're afraid to tell them. But the fact is, there's a lot of age-appropriate programs that teach kids about how to keep themselves safe. And you don't necessarily need to use the word sexual abuse, right? There's age-appropriate ways to tell your kids about it from when they're very little. And I think looking around here, I don't think anyone here is a parent, but when you do become a parent, if you do become a parent, right, you're gonna find age-appropriate ways to teach your kids about okay things, not okay things. And think about it just like you teach kids about how to cross the street safely, right? You say, okay, you gotta stop here, you gotta look both ways, make sure it's safe, go across, right? Make sure you're making eye contact with the driver if they stop, right? So you're teaching them basic things, and it's the same thing with this. It's basic safety things that you're teaching them what to look for, what to do, what not to do, right? It's the same idea. And when you put it in that context of like how to keep themselves safe crossing the street, it doesn't feel as scary, right? And you can do it in an age-appropriate way. It's not about like frightening the child. Like you're not gonna say, don't ever go outside, cars are scary, right? You're not gonna tell them that. It's the same thing. It's not meant to be frightening, it's meant to just help them keep themselves safe. Okay, next. Most children would tell an adult if someone was touching them inappropriately. False. Yeah. Good job, guys. So the truth is 2 out of 3 said they never told anyone about the abuse during childhood. So this we kind of touched upon earlier, right? So unfortunately, as I said, it's based out of fear and secrecy, and so a lot of kids don't disclose when they're kids, and a lot of people don't disclose even when they become adults. And there are so many reasons for that. So as I mentioned, one of them is fear. So the person might have threatened the child, might have threatened the family. Another one is shame. So feeling like they did something that was really bad, right? So like that feeling of like themselves is bad. There's guilt, so feeling like I did something bad and I'm the cause of all of this stuff. There's a lot of reasons kids don't disclose, and it's not necessarily about like, I don't have anyone to tell or anything like that. It's for fear, shame, guilt. Another big reason is because sometimes the kid doesn't know what's wrong. So especially if they're much younger, they don't know. They don't know like, oh, I'm not supposed to be doing this because this person that I love and trust is telling me it's okay, so it must be okay. So sometimes they don't even know what's wrong. Sometimes they don't have the language for it, so sometimes, especially if they don't know, they don't understand their body, they don't understand what's okay, what's not okay, they don't understand the names of their body parts, things like that, they might not even have the language to say, you know, this person did something to me, right? So it's another big reason. 2 other things I really want you guys to know is that the rates of false allegations is extremely low, so sometimes people will say, well, oh, kids are not telling the truth. In our field, in the child welfare field specifically, we always believe kids because that is their truth, right? So like whether something happened, whether something didn't happen, whether it happened but not to the extent that they did, it doesn't matter in that moment because we always believe kids are telling the truth and that's their truth. And it's very rare that they're gonna make something like that up because it's scary, right? Like as I said, there's fear, there's shame, there's guilt, there's all these other feelings. So no one's gonna no child's gonna go out of their way and make a disclosure that's not true, right? So it's very rare. And then there are some cases where kids take back their disclosure, and that's called recanting. Kids do that, but it's rare that they're recanting because they're lying. That, again, it's rare that they're lying about it. A lot of times they're recanting because they disclosed and all of these things happen and people are angry and people are talking and it's scary for that kid, so they're like, forget it, I'm just gonna take it back. Like, I don't want whatever came along with this, so they take it back, so they recant it. But the rates of recanting because they're not telling the truth is very low, okay? So it's not very common that they're gonna make a false statement, okay? Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay. Please feel free to stop me if you do, or just raise your hand. Okay, and then again, going back to the fact that there's a universal responsibility, that abuse can really happen anywhere. Nobody is immune to it, no churches are immune to it, and we all play an important role in this church as role models and as members of the congregation, and so we all have a hand in keeping our kids safe, okay? All right, so now we're gonna shift into recognizing the warning signs. So again, because kids don't typically disclose, they don't typically say, like, hey, this thing is happening, you have to look out for certain things. So we're gonna go over some things that you can look for to be able to recognize what like suspicious activity would look like, okay? So some of the things that to look out for, okay? So you're looking for anything that feels off or out of place. So things like, so first, before that, the thing is, you're not looking at one single incident either, right? You're not looking at an isolated incident. You're basically looking for a pattern over time, okay? So a lot of things by themselves may be like, oh, that's kind of weird, but like, okay, like I can see how that can be okay. But when it's repeated and consistent, that's when the alarm bells should go off, and you should say, like, okay, that's not normal, that's not okay, okay? So the big thing is you're looking patterns over time, not isolated incidents. And some of those things could be like boundary testing, okay? So, we're going to talk about boundaries in a little bit, but basically you're testing boundaries like, oh, like I'm going to, touch on the shoulder, then it's going to be the back, then it's going to be the lower back, right? So a touch on the shoulder by itself is not a big deal, right? We touch, it touches like, it's a love language, right? It's okay. But again, you're looking for pattern over time, and it's that suspicious of like, that doesn't look right to me, right? Isolation, so like pulling one child aside, always asking kid to stay after class, asking kid to go on for a walk, right? So like that one-on-one time, that isolation. Again, by itself, not a big deal, but over time, consistently, it can be concerning. Excessive attention, so it's singling one kid out, either positively or maybe even sometimes negatively, right? Like, oh yeah, you're right, you're the best, you're my favorite. Or yeah, I'm gonna buy you something after class today, or hey, let's go get a drink together after Sunday school, right? So like all of those like little things that by themselves don't seem huge, but then over time, coupled with other stuff, may be concerning. Gift giving, again. So again, all those little things. Okay. The next is grooming. Again, as I said, grooming is a gradual process. It starts off with something small, and then it gets bigger. It's kind of like when you work with kids, they kind of test their limits, like, oh, I'm gonna do this and see how you react, and I'm gonna do this and see how you react, right? And it's the same thing with grooming. They're gonna try something small, see how the kid reacts, see how the family reacts, and then it's gonna escalate to something bigger and bigger and bigger. And a big part of that grooming is building trust, so building trust with the child and also building trust with the family. And then once they have that trust, again, they're looking for that access and they're looking for that opportunity. The key thing here is that boundaries are, they're not crossed all at once. Again, as I said, it's gradual and it happens over time. So it might start with something like a little extra attention, a little friendliness, a little, hey, what's your number so I can text you about the Sunday school lesson, right? It starts off as something small and then it can grow into something else. And actually, it's really hard to sometimes pinpoint this because early on, it actually might look positive and supportive. You might be like, oh, that's great, they have such a good connection, they have a good relationship, but it could build into something negative later on. So we're not judging on a single behavior, it's more of that pattern and that progression over time, okay? The other thing is to really trust your instincts. So as a social worker, we often say things like trust your gut, like you have to trust your gut. And I feel like even in your everyday, sometimes you do have to do that, right? You have to trust your gut. And if something feels off, that matters. You shouldn't dismiss that because chances are something might be off, right? You're all smart, intelligent people. You grew up in schools, like you're social, right? So you know when things are feeling off and when they're not. So it's important that if you feel it, to report it, okay? And when I say report it, I'm not saying about necessarily reporting to like the state at this time, right? But reporting to someone, reporting to a professional, reporting to a head servant, reporting it to an abuna, right? So just talking about it, because like talking about it makes a big difference, because you don't know. You might see like one or two things that don't seem a big deal and you tell abuna, but maybe abuna, that's like the 8th time he's heard about something like that, some interaction with that person, right? So it's a big deal to make sure you're telling people who may know more about that person or about the situation, to make sure that we're keeping the kids safe. And also, I just want to make sure you know, reporting is not necessarily like an investigation, right? Like reporting is not like, that person's going to get in trouble, that person's going to get arrested, or whatever, whatever the next steps are. Reporting, just saying like, hey, I noticed something and I don't feel comfortable with it. I want to make sure somebody knows about it, so that, you can look into it, you can speak to it, or you can address it, or report it if that's what it needs to happen. Okay? Do you guys have any questions so far? Yeah. Yes, that's a great question. And actually, one of the things that we're rolling out with the servants is that we have a policy. So our church has policies on when we see something suspicious, what we do, who we report it to, what steps are taken, what kind of follow-up is done. And there's like a whole training, and there's a whole training for the servants to take. And our church has a really good, actually, administrative policy for how to handle these things. So that's a great question. And they do talk, and they have consultants and things like that.
One thing that's still being refined that makes that such an important and excellent question is what the feedback mechanism is. Because on the one hand, we want these things to be addressed. On the other hand, we want to respect privacy and avoid any scandal, especially if it's like a misunderstanding or something like that. So not just here in Natick, where our priests are super open-minded about this sort of thing and super interested, but at the diocese level, where it's going to be sometimes this, sometimes that, this abuna and that abuna, this style or that style. But you can imagine if there isn't a consistent, airtight mechanism for, it's our responsibility to do these trainings. It's our responsibility for everybody to understand that they are the eyes and ears of the diocese. They understand that if something is brought, it's going to be taken seriously. But then that feedback mechanism of, okay, this is what was reported, this is how it was processed, this is how it was evaluated, and this was the consequence in a private, not scandalous kind of way. And that's an incredibly important question that is still in the process of getting worked out, but that's a great question.
All right. So next, minimizing opportunities. So now that we know what the signs are and what to look out for and some basic facts, we'll talk about what you can do, some tools you can use. So again, safe environment, safe people, keep kids safe. When I look back, it's when I was in Sunday school, because I grew up in this church, and I look back in Sunday school, and it was there was a lot of things that would fly that would not fly these days, and I don't know if that was your experience too about growing up in this church. And it's not that it was bad or wrong. I think it's just a different time, and we know a lot more now. We know what to look for. We know what to be careful for. And as I briefly mentioned, and as Mina just mentioned, our church does have a policy, and there are things that we do, like signing, a safety procedure. We do CORI checks on servants. We do, we have a lot of steps that we're taking to help work towards having a formal process, as Mina mentioned, and feedback loop, and making sure that kids are safe. And then again, as servants, there are other ways, other than these formal administrative ways. There's other ways to keep kids safe. And we touched upon these a little bit already, but some of them are physical boundaries, so no isolation, being careful not to be one-on-one with a kid in a room with a closed door, keep that door open, pulling kids aside separately, singling them out in certain ways, appropriate touching. Again, I think especially now, kids, touch is not, touching, I think, is okay, can I give you a hug, or giving them another option, okay, can I have a hug or a high five, or do you want to just wave, right? Because not every kid is comfortable with touching or hugging or things like that, and giving kids permission to not hug, right, and not give a kiss. Again, I'll use myself as an example, go kiss Tant, go give Uncle a hug, go do this, right? And you had to, because that's our culture. And it's not a bad thing. Our culture is very loving, and it's very, we love those hugs and kisses and things like that, but giving kids permission to not do that if they're not comfortable is okay too. And when they see an adult giving them permission, they feel empowered to say, okay, I actually don't really want to do that. It doesn't make me comfortable. Okay? And like physical contact should be like brief, appropriate, in context, right? So you're not randomly going around giving people hugs and kisses, for example, right? I'll just use that as an example. Again, never forcing kids to hug you or anything like that. Look around the classroom, wherever you are, wherever you are with the kids, like look around, keep an eye out for like what's happening around you. And sometimes it's not just servants and kids, sometimes it's kids and kids too. And like kids are just sometimes immature. Like it could be 100% innocent that they're just immature, or they're touching each other, or they're hitting each other in certain ways, right? But making sure you're intervening and like letting them know, like, actually I saw that and it's not okay, because it gets that kid know, like, yeah, it's not okay, I didn't feel comfortable with that. Because when you're in that group setting and kids are like hitting each other or whatever they're doing, kids don't feel, they don't want to single themselves out. It's like, no, I don't like that, because everyone's kidding and joking and they don't want to be the one kid who says no. But if you're the servant and you're going in and saying, no, actually that's not okay, that's not how we play, right? It's different. It makes that kid feel empowered that they can also say no. And it's not, I feel like it's a lot of like assuming people have bad intent, but I want to make it clear that I don't think that's the case. I think most people don't have bad intent. I think most people are good. I think, again, it's accumulation of different choices and decisions and, that causes things to happen. And so it's just about maintaining that safe space and that safe structure for these outings and events with kids to make sure that they're safe. Another thing is verbal boundaries. So language with children is really important because, first of all, kids don't always understand adult jokes and they don't always understand sarcasm. So the language you use with kids is really important. Even if it's joking, even if it's totally good-natured and innocent, being careful of the language you're using, like make sure it's like not personal, it's professional, it's appropriate, right? You want to make sure that language you're using with kids is very clear. Because again, kids can't pick up on all the nuances that adults can about like jokes and things like that. Jokes shouldn't be about like personal topics. They shouldn't be body related, right? About like, hey, whatever, anything about their body basically. And it shouldn't be anything that makes them uncomfortable. I can see how this can be a little bit hard, especially if you're like personal friends with the child or personal friends with the family, but as much as possible in the setting of service, trying to maintain it like servant and child, like that, that you're the servant in that role. The other thing is that we never ask kids to keep secrets. So again, even if it's like a positive thing, like, hey, this is gonna be like our inside joke, like don't ask kids to keep secrets, because we teach parents that kids shouldn't keep secrets from them, right? And so it kind of puts that kid in that position of, well, my servant told me it's a secret, but my parents told me I can't, but I know my servant, I love my servant, right? So again, even if it's good-natured and it's a positive thing, not telling a child like, hey, this is our little secret, right? Because it opens up that door of that fear and that secrecy of the of abuse or where it could lead to. And I'm not saying that your specific interaction necessarily, but it sets the tone for the child. Like, I kept a secret with that person, and I have a secret with that person, right? It normalizes it for them. And we don't want kids to feel that they should be keeping secrets, especially from their parents. Again, the favoritism, like you're my favorite, or things like that, even in passing. Because the other thing is kids hear it too. So just being careful about that. And the biggest goal here is like it needs to be just consistent, appropriate, and equal across all the children. And I think if you're keeping those guidelines, you're already setting up a safe environment. Okay, another one is digital boundaries. I didn't have this growing up, okay? We didn't have phones or smartphones when I was a kid, but we do now, and access to it is getting younger and younger. The amount of kids in kindergarten even sometimes that have phones is mind-boggling. Like, these kids can't even read, but they have smartphones somehow. And so digital communication is a huge thing, and as you know, like social media, texting, video chats, Roblox, right? Everywhere you look, kids are having access to communication, and so that's why it makes this really difficult. But some things that you can do to make sure kids are being safe, being transparent. So like a big thing is like, no private texting. So if you're texting a kiddo, making it in a group setting, either with other children or with that kid's parent, right? So like you're not texting one-on-one with the child. No direct messaging on social media, which is like a huge one. So like, hey, I liked your picture. Oh, I see you're at the beach, right? So like those types of things. No late night texting, even if it's innocent. Again, even if it's innocent, just because like late night texting, like you're in bed already, you're maybe scrolling or whatever it is, right? So like no late night texting. So these are just like steps to take, and I'm thinking forward. It's hard to adapt these boundaries to every single situation, so I'm just throwing out random ones, but I'm sure you can think of a situation where you would or wouldn't do it. And I think it's not necessarily, again, for you specifically, but if you see it, if you hear about it, or if a kid says, oh, yeah, this person texted me at 11 o'clock at night and they were asking about, XYZ, right? Again, suspicious activity, your flag is going up, and it's not, again, that isolated situation, but maybe it's that coupled with something else and something else, okay? And so the big thing about it should be just visible, appropriate, and accountable. So like someone else knows that you're doing that, you're going forward with that communication, okay? And then the other thing is there's a lot of gray area. Like, unfortunately, it's never gonna be black and white. And I think that's probably the hardest thing. It's like, it's easy to say, okay, this is a list of things, look for them, check the boxes. If they add up, great, right? But it's not, unfortunately. It's a lot of gray area. It's a lot of I'm not sure. It's a lot of I don't know. But I think if you stick to the things that we talked about, it's like patterns, trust your gut, and you don't have to be sure. Like, if you're not sure, it's okay. You don't have to be sure, because a report doesn't mean it's going to be an investigation. A report just says, like, hey, I saw something concerning. I want to make sure someone else knows about it, so I'm not the only one. So I'm not just the only person holding this information. Okay? Do you guys have any questions? Are you guys okay? Okay. All right. So react responsibly. So this section is basically just about if you see something, if a child says something to you, if you're suspicious about something, okay? So going back to earlier in the presentation, remember that it's rare that a child is directly going to disclose to you, okay? Usually they're not going to come up and say, XYZ just happened, or XYZ happened yesterday, or whatever it is. More common, they're going to say, I saw something, or, my brother keeps, or I don't like when, right? So it's going to start something like that. And so these are kind of things to help guide you for if something like that were to happen and you think it's going to be a disclosure, or you think they're going to tell you something, something more. And the big thing about this is that they're trying to see how you're going to react, okay? So they want to see, like, are you going to have a big reaction or not? Like, are you going to be mad or not? Is this okay for me to tell you, okay? So the first step is that you have to stay calm. I know this is really hard, especially if you hear something that's really upsetting, but it's really, really important that you stay calm, because if you have a big reaction, that child might shut down. So that opportunity might be out the window. If they say, like, oh, they got really mad, or they got really scared, or they got really upset, they also might shut down, because remember, they might not know that it's something wrong, actually. They might not even be disclosing to you. They might just be sharing something that happened, not thinking that it's something like a big deal, right? So it's really important that you kind of hold it together so that that child can continue to tell you whatever they need to tell you. And I just want to acknowledge that that could be really hard. Like, it could be really, really hard to do that. But I think about, like, ways that you keep yourself calm in general ways, right? Like, you're taking deep breaths. I think it's also okay to say, like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna just take a deep breath, and let's keep talking about this. Or let's go to this space and grab someone else who's trusted, right? So, like, I think keeping calm is going to be the biggest thing, and do what you need to do in that moment to kind of keep calm, so that child doesn't shut down and stop, telling you what they wanted to tell you. So for a disclosure, so if a child does disclose something for you, these are some steps that are really important. So the first one is just listening. As I said, like, it doesn't matter if it happened or not in that moment, right? In that moment, your only job is just to listen to that child, validate, and just be there for that kid, like, hold a space for that kid, right, basically. So again, whether or not you believe the child, it really doesn't matter in that moment. And you could say something like, thank you for telling me, that was really brave of you, I believe you, right? So those things are really important for a child to hear, to know that you're a safe person and they can continue telling you things. You can assure them that they're doing the right thing. I'm really glad you told me. I want to make sure that you get the help that you need, right? They need to hear those things to have assurance. You can also tell them things that make sure that they know that it's not their fault, so that they don't have that blame and that guilt. So, this is not your fault, you did the right thing, you're not in trouble. So come in some of that assurance, because usually that's the first thing on a kid's mind, like, am I going to be in trouble? You're like, what's going to happen to me? And kids are kind of like, they're self-centered in that way, like, not in a negative way, but they think about themselves, like, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to be in trouble? What's going to happen to my family? Is mom going to be mad? Who's going to find out? You know what I mean? So, like, all these questions are running through their head, so giving them as much assurance as you can is going to be really important. Another big thing is not to lead the child, so don't ask leading questions. So that could look like, you know, did this or this happen? Like, you know, or did he touch you there? Or, you know, did, kind of anything that's leading them to an answer of like a yes or no, because kids are also like very like, they want to please the person in front of them. And so if you ask them something like, if you say, like, are you sure, are you sure, are you sure, and they keep on giving the same answer, they might change their answer because they're like, well, I keep on giving you the same answer, you keep on asking me, you must want a different response, right? So you don't want to lead them in that questioning of like, are you sure this happened? Or like, and did this happen? You know, it's like, that's like a leading question. So giving them space to tell you information and you're just taking it rather than you leading them to the answers that you're looking for. Avoid making any judgments about the alleged abuser. So that can be really hard for a kid, again, because we know that they're trusted adults usually. So if you make a statement against that alleged abuser, it could be difficult for the child. Be like, no, but he's a good person, or she's a good person, right? You know, I trust them, and no, they wouldn't do anything to hurt me. So not making any of those judgmental comments. And then assure them that you're going to help them. So like, I will help you. I care about your safety. This is serious. So those are kind of the basic things of what to do if a child discloses, and we'll get into what not to do later on, okay? The next one is just if you've witnessed something or you've heard something, again, like that suspicious activity, your gut feeling, something that kind of is a pattern, just report it. The next one is if you suspect something, so some of those things about the suspicious activity that we talked about, keep your eyes open, right? So set limits when you're able to, ask questions when you're able to, intervene when you're able to, try to get that more information, but not in a leading way, and then discuss it with a professional, with a buna, with you know, a head servant, but discuss your concerns. Don't keep it just to yourself, because you don't know what else is going on in the bigger picture, and you don't know what else other people know, so making sure you're talking about it, okay? Okay, some things not to do. First of all, do not investigate, okay? That's not your job, that's not your role, and it could lead to like dangerous things, right? So like you don't know the extent of whatever you're hearing, and so if you start questioning or investigating or talking to parents or talking to other children, it might stir up a lot of stuff that's not necessary, so don't investigate, right? It's not your role, and like even in the child welfare world, like we always say, like it's not my job to know and it's not my job to figure out if it's true, right? There are systems for that already. So you don't have to hold that burden of investigating and finding out if something did or did not happen. Do not ask questions extensively. Again, we kind of talked about this already, right? So like let them go at their own pace, let them disclose whatever they're comfortable with. If they've told you and they're like, okay, I'm all done, like you're done, right? Like take that information and do whatever you need to do with what you know. And again, that can be hard as an adult because you want all the facts first, but you have to kind of be okay with not having all the facts and just doing the best with the information that you have. Because again, that questioning, one, can turn into leading questioning, and then two, can make the kid say like, forget it, like this is not what I expected, I'm gonna just change my answer to shut this down. Another big one is do not promise secrecy. So a lot of time kids will say, like, do you promise not to tell anybody? You know, I think it's hard to make that promise because you will, you know, if something bad did happen, you have to tell someone, and I think you can tell that kid that, you know, I know you don't want anyone to know, but this is what we're going to do, you know, giving them that power and control of like, this is what's going to happen, so they know what to expect, you know, this is what, these are the steps I'm going to take, and then stressing the importance of like making sure, you know, I want to make sure that you're going to be safe, and I want to make sure that other children are going to be safe, and that's why we have to tell people, right? So helping them understand why you can't keep it a secret. But I think promising secrecy, especially depending on the age of the child, can be really difficult, because then later on they could say, okay, you promised you weren't going to tell anybody and you did, and then look what happened, right? So just being careful when you can to not promise secrecy. I think it can get tricky if a child says, like, I want to tell you something, but you have to promise not to tell anybody, right? And sometimes you might say, like, okay, like, just tell me. And then if it does end up being a safety issue, being like, look, I know I promised that I wasn't going to tell anybody, but this is why we have to tell someone, right? And then at the end of the day, you have that responsibility of making sure you're reporting if something unsafe is happening. Also, not promising everything will be okay. Again, that's really hard because you want to give that child the assurance of like, don't worry, I'm going to help you. And you are, right? You're going to take steps and you're going to help them, but it might not be okay in the way that they're visioning okay, right? Because things will likely change depending on what it is. And I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking of like worst case scenario. If something really bad is happening, things are going to change for that child and that family, and it's going to be hard. So it's not like okay in the sense that they're thinking okay. So not promising that everything's going to be okay, but just making sure they know, like, I'm with you. I'm gonna be along with you. There's gonna be people to support you, right? So giving them some assurance, but like that word, like everything's gonna be okay, is not always gonna be accurate. And we don't want to lie to the child. We want to make sure we're setting them up for, what's to come. Do not confront the accused. Again, that goes back to like do not investigate. Like confronting them could be potentially unsafe. It can make things worse. There are people who already do this, who are professionals who know how to do it about in safe ways. So make sure you're not doing that. And don't conduct your own inquiry. Like don't take it upon yourself to figure out like what happened and why and when and all those things. Okay. Any questions so far? No. Okay, we're almost done. It's not moving. Okay. All right, well, it's not moving, but the next slide just says, like, it takes a village. Like, we're all, like, we always say, like, again, none of you guys are parents, but if you were to become a parent, you'll know, or if you talk to parents, like, no one does this by themselves. Like, it's so hard to raise kids, and that's why we have this amazing community, and I tell people all the time, I'm so lucky to have this community that I know people who will jump in if I need it, help with rides, right? Like, we all love our children, no matter if you're a parent or not, servant or not. We love our children, we love this congregation, and we need to take care of them. And so just, becoming educated is the first step. And so like you're already moving towards that of being able to keep kids safe. You already know facts, you know what to look for. So you've kind of already done that first step, and understanding that there is a problem. I think the biggest thing is like saying like, no, but we don't have that problem here. Like that would be alarming. But the fact that we know like it is a problem, it is widespread, it's everywhere, is again, a big jump to being able to keep kids safe. And when we work together to create that safe space for kids, like we're already making things better for our children, for these next generations that are coming about. Oh, there it is. Yeah, and that's it. That's my talk. So, you guys have any questions? Yeah. I think that's tricky because I think that part of it is out of your control, right? So like I think for this work in general, we always you can only focus on what you can control. So what can you control in that situation? I can control the fact that a child told me something, and I know I'm doing the right steps to take. Like I'm taking the right steps to make sure that kid is safe. And sometimes that's all you can do. And I think if you have a good relationship with the parents, for example, or if another servant does, right? Educating the parent about what's happening and why it's happening and the disclosure, because I think anger comes up from fear sometimes. It's just it's scary, and I can imagine as a parent, if my child were to tell me something, right, I have a big reaction. It's not because I'm angry necessarily, it's because I'm afraid. And I think it goes back to that education of understanding, why they didn't disclose to the parent, for example, or it could also come from guilt of I'm the one I was responsible for that child, and I let them go to this situation that was unsafe. So there could be a lot happening for that parent that's not necessarily anger at the child. And so it's important that the parent has support, whatever that may look like, because there are definitely professional supports available. There's definitely internal supports available. There's a lot of professionals in the church. The Abunas, God bless them, hear a lot and they do a lot of support, right? So I get it. There's a burden almost of what's going to happen of the unknown, but I think you have to just focus on okay, what do I know? What are the facts, and what can I control in that situation? So I'm sorry, it's not a great answer, and it doesn't resolve that concern, but I think that's the best kind of advice I can give.
One of my kids on the way to church this morning, we were having an argument about something else, and that's when the kid decided to tell me, you don't even know what's going on. There's something really bad happening, and I don't want to tell you about it. What? What are you talking about? And this was like in response to the same kid getting in trouble for something else and me being upset about something else. So now I went from being upset about something else to being worried, like, okay, what is it? Like, is it, I'm like, is it school? Is it church? Is it something else? I'm not gonna tell you because blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay. So now I'm the bad parent because, you know, I was being, in my mind, appropriately firm and disciplining about this other thing, and now I've lost the trust, right, of, you know, I can't be told about this thing because I'm now the devil. Okay. I can't imagine, right? I can't imagine when it's actually something real. Like, hopefully this thing that I don't know anything about because, you know, I'm old and stupid and, you know, whatever, is fine, right? And that's all I asked. I'm like, listen, you don't need to tell me what's going on. Just tell me, is it going to be fine? And yes, it's going to be fine. Okay, good. That's all I need to hear. But if it's something like this, I think Tina's answer to your, again, excellent question, which is, you know, how do you reassure everybody that everything's going to be okay? It's not, right? If something like this happens, the parents are going to freak out. Your question is, at its core, one about trust. How do you keep this kid from losing trust? You don't, right? And there's a reason why this work is so important, why Tina and Mary and Olivia and Martina and all of these people who have an expertise in this area are teaching, not just the Agape Project members or the parents, but the servants and the priests and everybody, so that it's clear that at least there is this conscious incompetence that we all have, where yes, we have experts and we have people who know what they're talking about, but then there's the rest of us who can't just be like, I don't know, it's not my thing. I don't know, like, I'm sure we have somebody dealing with this. No. Everybody is responsible for something that's so important, but we're not responsible for fixing it. We're responsible for, number one, being aware, being open, that if like a kid trusts us enough to be like, hey, something happened, like Tina said, if the only thing that you do is stay calm and say, this is what Tina was talking about, like, okay, is it okay if I tell Abuna? No. Okay, well, I think I'm going to tell Abuna anyway, because this is a really big deal, right? And hopefully that kid trusts you enough that even if they don't want you to tell Abuna, you're like, listen, I'm so sorry, like, this is too big of a deal for me to keep myself. Like, hopefully you understand and you forgive me for passing this information along, and thank you for trusting me with the information. And if that's the only thing that happens, and everything blows up into like a huge problem and a huge scandal, you did not cause that. You're not the one who did something. Right? So identifying these issues is a community awareness thing, and you're like, I'm never going to be Tina, I'm never going to be Mary, I'm never going to be Olivia, I'm never going to be one of these people that has expertise in this thing, but supporting them and making sure that their voice is heard and that we take this seriously and we take this as something that is a priority for us is really important. But phenomenal question.
Continue to show up even if they push you away, just to continue to be that safe place no matter what they do. Like, even if they're continuously pushing you away because they're upset, you just continue to show up. That's all you can do.
I like Mina's point about if they're coming to you, it means that they already have this trust relationship with you, which goes back to kind of what we talked about last week about being more than just a teacher-student relationship, but sort of a mentor or discipleship. So you're building a relationship with them so that they feel safe enough to come talk to you. But I think Mina made a good point about like just telling them, can I tell somebody about this? So at least they know that you plan to pass this information along. And I think that builds that trust as well. So at least it doesn't come as a shock to them and they understand sort of, and you can also talk to them about why you think it needs to be spoken. Like, you can kind of talk with them. If they initially are resisting that, you can sort of walk them through and say, this is why we think this should be talked about and should be passed along. So I think it's important, but it all goes back to that. And even if they have some, I don't want to say distrust, but if they're upset with you at the beginning, they may in the end ultimately reflect back and say, I'm glad that this happened.
And I also think like being upset is like, it's not great, but it's better than, you know, like not doing it, right? Like not telling. So like I think in a lot of maybe your work, like you're outweighing like pros and cons of a situation. Like does the benefit outweigh the risks? And it's the same with this. And I think 100% of the time, like the benefits of reporting is going to be better than whatever the situation is. Yeah. Does anyone else have questions? Yeah.
You may have mentioned this, but maybe I missed it. Let's say I'm a servant in a class with 10 other servants and you see something suspicious. Are you like supposed to tell the lead servant in the class, any other servant? Do you go to the priest? Like what's the protocol exactly?
Yeah. So there is a protocol. It's being rolled out. I think as it is right now, and Mina, please correct me, it's Telebuna, correct?
It's tell someone, right? So, guys, this is when I was alluding to this earlier. This is still a feedback mechanism question, right? Because your question is, who do I tell? But what you're asking is, who do I tell and have the confidence that something will be done about it? Right? Because it's not who do I tell and then like, oh, you know, like I did what I had to do. It's, okay, like if I tell Ahab, is Ahab going to take care of it? Or is that where the story ends? If you had confidence that, listen, I just need to tell Ahab, and Ahab is going to tell Tina, and Tina is going to tell Abuna, and it's going to follow the proper channels, and there's going to be discretion and privacy and no scandal, and like, you know, let's actually properly investigate it, then you'll just tell Ahab. The question is right now, we've defined this stream, right, which is tell someone, right? Tell your head servant, tell Amin al-Usra, tell Ted, tell Abuna, tell whoever, right? And hopefully the system itself is designed so that information, regardless of where it goes to a person in a position of authority, it goes to someone who has, number one, a responsibility to do something about it, and number two, oversight on them to make sure that whatever their responsibility to do something is actually done with the feedback mechanism, so that without scandal, without, like, again, like the privacy issues are what make this so sensitive, but it's going to be required that there is like an accounting of so-and-so said this at this time to this person, there's a paper trail, there's a chain of custody on, you know, the information, and if, God forbid, this ends up in some kind of legal lawsuit or whatever, we don't have the luxury of doing this, let's just see, like, I told the him, what do you want? No, there has to be a formality about how this is reported. So for now, the answer is, just tell somebody. And if you feel like it's being addressed and you get some follow-up and you're like, hey, like, you know, yeah, we looked into it and blah, blah, blah. I can't share too much, but, you know, it's being handled. Okay, good, thank God, right? But if you feel like, okay, I told you, then tell somebody else and tell somebody else. And that realistically is going to be, unfortunately, that part of the reality is the system is only as good as its enforcers, and everybody in this room is going to be an enforcer, right? Like if you told so-and-so and they didn't do something, then you go to whoever else is responsible for so-and-so and say, listen, I told so-and-so 3 weeks ago and I've heard nothing back. That is on you as well.
Yeah. I would say no. I don't think it's, I mean, I guess it depends on maybe what it is. You know, it's hard to say, right? Like, is it like it's just something that makes you uncomfortable? Is it something you're like, I don't know about that relationship? Or is it something extreme? I think it would be a really difficult conversation for a servant to have with a parent, and I don't know that you guys are, like, I don't think that generally people are equipped with having a conversation like that. I think if it were to escalate to like needing to tell parents, and like let's say Abuna is going to tell the parents, being a support, I think that could be okay, you know. yeah, it's hard to say because like it's hard to know what the situation is and like is it something that you would tell parents?
And I imagine, right, you mentioned about depending on the severity. If it is something that's really severe, it will probably, I mean, the sort of, your group will probably help with expediting to tell the parents, you know, as soon as possible, like, so it shouldn't have to fall on the servant in any case. I think, yes, being a support, I think it probably makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, I don't think it should fall on the servant. And yeah, and the priests again, like I said, God bless them. Like they know what to do. They know how to report right to the state. They've done it. So you know, trust that those things will get done if it's severe enough, and parents will find out that way too. Any other questions? No? Okay. All right. Thank you guys so much for having us. We really appreciate your time and your commitment to our kids. And like I said, we're available. We're a huge group. There's a lot of other people who are not here, like Maggie Ibrahim, Martina Youssef, Martina Mehta. That's her maiden name. I don't know. Really? Yeah. Yeah, it is. Samer Ibrahim. Who else, guys? I'm sorry. Diana Gatas. Or Anthony. Yeah. Anyway, we're a huge group, so just find one of us if you have questions or if you want to discuss something too, or the Abunas as well. Okay. All right.
Let's stand up for prayer 1 second. Sorry.
Here is God when we pray, thankfully, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil one. Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, power, and glory forever. Amen. Thank you to the Agape group. They're doing amazing work. And we're lucky to have them and have them here locally. They're from our servants. There are churches out there that they would love to have two of these people. So we're blessed. Thank God for them. And please spread the message that they just shared with us.
And don't forget to fill out the form. All right, and we'll see you guys all next week.
you want to play the cymbals? Yeah, you want to play the cymbals? Okay, good. I get you the rest. Yeah, here you go. Hold them good. Yeah. What are you going to say for us? Yeah, okay. Let's go. We're going to say 3 units songs.
you're just gonna swipe on the, yeah, I'll show you. Yeah, I'm gonna bring it to you right now. Sure. That's all you gotta do. I think it's just the top. Yeah. That's the top after that. Yeah, right. That's it. I don't know. Because we can flash.
Wait for it. Oh man, it's gonna take a while.
I can get out of the presentation part. I'm just trying to keep anything. I'll go back to the video in a minute. One minute.
Okay.
These are the videos?
Yes.
You and I both do this thing called stimming.
But you can't,
Do you
it's
want it
not
to be
actually
big?
showing.
No, it is.
I mean,
It
it's
is.
not actually.
Do you want it to be bigger, you mean?
It would be nice, but it's okay if it's not.
Short for self-stimulatory
But see, look.
behavior. You've
Oh,
probably
there it
heard the
is.
word associated with
Maybe you can
autism,
help
but
me get
everyone
I
stims
might
you.
actually have to take him for a nap in
Oh,
just a
okay.
moment.
Or
I
somebody maybe
apologize.
can help me.
Yeah, I'll be around. I'll be around.
All right, let's just get out and
Stimulatory behavior. You
go to the.
Let's go back to here. And if not, we can always give them the links to the video
Yeah.
for them to watch view later, yeah?
Yeah.
Let's go back to here.
Yeah.
Press the,
From start. Yeah. Okay. All right. You'll begin with.
perfect. Let's stand up to pray.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. We ask you, Heavenly Father, to bless our assemblies and bless this gathering. Give us a word through your Holy Spirit for our edification and for the benefit of the service and the servants and those whom we serve. Through the intercession of St. Mary, St. Mark, and all your saints, hear us, God, and make us worthy to say, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespass, as we forgive those trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom and the glory forever. Thank you, Habib.
I want to, before we start, I want to back with questions as to how do you want to benefit from this service? How do you engage with this group? How do you take advantage of them for the class? We had planned, I kind of had worked with Jackie and the team, we had planned part of a program that's called, I think, Dash. And that program has very, very specific things. It's not just the responsibility of the teacher and some of our children who need extra attention, it's all of us. So the intent was to work with the classes from first grade up to fourth grade on how to help the children all of the children in that class integrate and interact with the few. Yeah? So we tried to do it, a bunch of things that happened last year on scheduling, we were not able to do it in terms of accommodations because this will need to be very interactive. The children will need to sit around a table and they will listen and they will practice. So it's very important for us to kind of get this right, okay? Thank God, Sunday school building is back open. We can then leverage the space down the stairs again, okay? So thank you, Catherine, and I'm sure we'll come back with some good questions.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm a member of St. Dymphna, and most of the rest of the team is here today. We have Sally, and raise your hands if you've been working with us in St. Dymphna. So we have a number of servants who've been working with the St. Dymphna group. We've been meeting now for almost 2 years. Is that right? So today, and Heba Fanous is not with us today, but she's a key driver in helping us to do some of these activities that we're planning for not just our children in the classroom, but for the congregation, for the parents, for you as servants, and for our Sunday school kids. So the idea of St. Dymphna is to bring awareness to our community about children with neurodiversity. And so today what I thought I'd do is tell you a little bit about the various activities that St. Dymphna is planning, and one of those is that we are trying to bring awareness to our community, to not just you as servants, but to the congregation, to the parents. So I'm going to show you the PowerPoint that Heba has created for the parents, what the parents will see when we meet with them. I'm going to tell you about some of the things we've been doing outside of this program that Ted just mentioned, and then I'm going to give you an example of what is the DASH program. What does that mean? And we're actually starting next week with the DASH program, and we're going to do it in the 5th grade. So some of the activities we've been doing, we just had a spiritual day in May with families of children who are on the autism spectrum, and we had about, how many children attended? 10 children with their families, and we were able to spend time doing activities together. Abuna Mark joined us. We got to know a little bit more about their families. We ate together after liturgy, and we spent time indoors and outdoors, and they made a craft together, and it was really a wonderful way to build community and for those parents to get to know each other as well, and get to talk about some of the resources that they already are using or didn't know about. And that's one of the things that St. Dymphna has been doing. We've done that once before, and we know that we want to continue doing that sort of activity event for families with children on the spectrum. We also, as I mentioned, we have this PowerPoint for parents, and in preparing, in showing this to you, this is the sort of thing that we would do for the congregation as well. And I'm showing this to you so that we're sort of going to teach you about what we're wanting to tell the congregation and the parents. We want everybody to be aware of how we're talking about these issues and how we want to reach out to families and make them realize that this is present amongst us. We have people and members of our community who need more understanding, and that's what we're going to try and do with this program. So let's just start. This is what parents will see when we give them, we'll talk to them separately on the day that their child is going to experience the DASH program in the classroom. So we're going to have a parent meeting, we have a servant ready to talk to the parents, and then we have servants ready to administer, if you will, the DASH program in the classroom. And I'll talk a little bit about what that involves. But we talk about what is neurodiversity, and it just means that there are differences in human brain function and behavioral traits, and those of us who have worked with a lot of children over the years, you do tend to notice sometimes when there are differences that really go beyond the norm, or what we call neurotypical behavior. And this is just part of the normal diversity in our human population. That slide, I don't know what that means, so I'm just going to skip it. But we're going to talk a little bit about explaining neurodiversity. And self-advocates have embraced this notion of neurodiversity. This is a quote from someone, by the way, to frame their claims that the state and society need to accommodate cognitive difference. So we as a society should try to accommodate this rather than change or cure it. So those who are autistic, have ADHD or learning differences, these are the people that we're talking about, because these are not necessarily things that can be cured. They are just differences. And it's a term used to denote support for all these forms of diversity that are rooted in differently wired brains. So we have people who are not neurotypical. Have you ever heard that word, neurotypical? It's been used much, much more in recent years, and it's becoming more in fashion to use those words, neurotypical and neurodivergent. It just means that some of us have brains that are wired a little bit differently than the majority of people. And these are some of the differences that, scientists actually have seen in biology. The neurotypical brain looks a little bit different than a brain of someone who has neurodiverse tendencies. The amygdala controlling the emotions is going to look a little bit different. The size of the brain is those with neurodiverse brains often have a slightly larger brain, and the connections, the wired connections in that brain are a little bit different than in a neurotypical brain. And you can see there are ways that scientists have been trying to figure out, how does this happen? Why is there neurodivergence in brain function? And there are some statistics we should probably know about. And of course, these, I'm not going to say that these are absolutely accurate, but this is close to what people are now thinking. Autism spectrum disorder, it's now said that about 2.5% of the population, or 1 in 44 children, are being diagnosed with this disorder, and about 10% of children are dealing with ADHD. And then, in general, those who have learning differences or disabilities, in addition to all of these, make up about 13% of our population. So it's not something we can ignore, and it's something we want to be able to understand and support. And you probably have heard this before, but boys are more often diagnosed to be neurodiverse, especially on the autism spectrum. But I have to say that sometimes girls are misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all, because girls have the ability to mask more easily. And masking, do you know what that means? Masking means they are able to learn from the society around them and from behaviors around them. They're able to hide their diversity more easily than boys can. So sometimes girls don't even get a diagnosis because they've become good at masking. And then there's types of ADHD too. There's sometimes a predominantly inattentive ADHD where they're not able to focus and pay attention in class, or predominantly hyperactive where there's more movement. They need to have more activity going on in their lives. They need to move more. And then you can have like a combined type of ADHD. So every brain is different, and there just are almost as many different types of ADHD and autism spectrum disorders as well. So here are some of the myths about the autism spectrum. One of them is that it's an intellectual disability. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we are going to say in the DASH program, but we don't consider it to be a disability. We consider it to be a different ability. It's the result of bad parenting. This is usually not the case. This is a genetic thing that is happening. I mean, they've diagnosed at least 100 genes now that can be affected and can have expressions that bring out autism spectrum. Autistic people can't be successful and independent, and we know that's not true. And neurodiverse kids are a bad influence on others. And some of that comes about because we don't know as a society how to understand and approach and be a part of the world that they are a part of. Do anybody else have any ideas or any other myths you can think of about neurodiversity? Yeah.
Can we discuss what exactly is the spectrum?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the slide is becoming.
I don't think there is a slide on that. Yeah. No. No. Yeah, so those are, yeah, that's a good myth, the type of food. Sometimes that can be,
Repeat the question.
oh, yeah, go ahead, say it in the
Sorry,
microphone.
I was just asking, like, people sometimes come and ask, like, is it because, my son or ate certain types of foods that
Yeah.
they became, or they
Yeah.
have, like, sometimes people wonder. I was just
Easy
asking.
answer is no, but sometimes people on the spectrum can have sensitivities to certain types of foods, and they will only want to eat certain foods. So we can sometimes conflate food and what people eat with thinking that that might be causing, what's going on, right? But the autism spectrum, this is relatively new in the last 10 years. The way we think about autism is that it's now like a kind of a spectrum. It includes so many different types of diagnoses that we don't call them separate things anymore. We just say it's an entire spectrum, and it's an autism spectrum disorder. So you could be anywhere sort of within that range, in that spectrum. And usually it has to do with social and behavioral interactions with people, and then having to do with the way one learns. I heard a great explanation of it in a different way, to think of it more like a wheel. It's not a continuous line where you have somebody isn't very much on the spectrum and then somebody who's very severely on the spectrum. We sometimes can think of a wheel, and the wheel has all sorts of different things in it that, what do you call them, symptoms or expressions of what this child or what this person looks like. And in that wheel, let's imagine we've got 30 different descriptions in that wheel. And, I have 10 of them. And my sister has only 3 of them. But what we really want to understand is how much support does each person need on the people who are on the autism spectrum. So they are now classified as, I'm an ASD1, ASD2, ASD3, ASD4, and those just represent the amounts of support a person would need. Somebody who's on ASD1 is someone who doesn't need as much support to get through their daily life as someone who might be ASD4. That person might be nonverbal and may need a lot of support. So we don't look at it in terms of a straight line of a spectrum in that sense. Okay, so these are more myths about ADHD. They're all C+ students, they're all hyperactive. ADHD kids can't focus. And ADHD kids are a result of poor discipline. Now, yeah, go ahead. Oh, we need the microphone, just a minute. Yeah, can you say that in the microphone?
I just wanted to add 2 more myths that we face a lot, is that they cannot understand or able to learn new strategies. It's a big myth that we face.
Yeah. The one that I think a lot of people would argue with is ADHD kids can't focus. Okay, that is one of the main symptoms we find in a lot of kids, right? Who they're in a classroom with you and they just can't sit and focus on whatever is being said, right? However, in their own life, they may have an interest that they are so interested in, they can hyper-focus. They can really focus a lot on a particular item that might really interest them. So it's not that they can't focus, but they need support in certain situations to be able to focus. Any more questions about that? Okay. And then this is just kind of an idea of thinking about the reactions of most neurodiverse people. You can have a full range of reactions in any one situation, but I see this as kind of normal range of reactions. Neurotypical people have some of the same reactions. You could be mad, happy, sad, content. All of those things are there. So it's not that neurodiverse people have different reactions. It's just that we have to learn how to understand what the reaction is that's happening in that moment means for that child. And two of the main things, well, there are so many things we could talk about in terms of autism spectrum disorders, but two of them are sensory processing disorder, the fact that autism spectrum disorder affects our nervous system, the whole nervous system, not just the brain, but all of our senses. And our sense of sight, hearing, smell, taste, all of those things can be heightened to the point that the person who has sensory processing disorder finds it very difficult to be in a normal room. For example, you could be sitting in this room and all you hyper-focus on the sound of that the whirring sound of the air conditioning, and every creak of a door opening or any kind of movement in the room becomes the only thing you can look at or pay attention to. And that makes it very hard then for them to
You and I
look
both
at me,
do this
for
thing
example.
called stimming, which is short for
Sorry. And the other thing is what we call stimming. Has anybody ever heard of that word, stimming? Stimming is called self-stimulatory behavior. And especially people on the autism spectrum, you'll find, if you ever seen a kid flapping their arms, walking around on tiptoes a lot, needing to bang their head against the wall or bang part of their body against something hard. They need that stimulus of touch, or they need to cover their heads or their ears with, what do you call it, headphones. And this is very common. A lot of people you'll see need, just to get through their day, they need to have headphones on so that auditory stimulation is not overwhelming, right? And one of the things that you do in your body to regulate all of that tension that you have from this oversensitivity to various parts of your nervous system is to let it out in some way. And letting it out, that whatever it is that you're doing to let it out is what we call stimming. And every child, every person who does this does it in a different way. And I thought this is a really good example. Caitlin she's on the autism spectrum, but she's become a very wonderful advocate for autism spectrum disorder, and she herself has overcome a lot to try and become a public speaker. Oops, excuse me. I'm going to see if this will work.
You and I both do this thing called stimming, which is short for self-stimulatory behavior.
I'm going to try and get this so you can see it. Okay.
You and I both do this thing called stimming, which is short for self-stimulatory behavior. You've probably heard the word associated with autism, but everyone stims, including you. Stimming is the repetition of physical movements, sounds, words, or moving objects. The difference between your stimming and mine as an autistic person is intensity and quantity. Although between you and me, the quality of mine is probably better too. Stimming as a neurotypical person might look like clicking a pen, bouncing your leg, humming, or biting your nails. Stimming as an autistic person could look like pacing, shaking objects, finger flicking, or rocking. People stim because it feels good. It can help us regulate stress and other emotions. Autistic people might stim more because in addition to helping us regulate our emotions, it can help us process sensory input.
Okay, did you get that? So we all do stim. We can all probably figure out times in our lives when we do stimming as well, right? But it's not, the intensity and frequency is just not nearly what we would see in a child who needs to stim to regulate their nervous system. How do I get out of this? I think I need help with that. And then we can also link these videos. Yeah, let's try this one. So this is a little bit more about auditory or sensory processing disorder. Yeah. How to make it louder. Okay. Okay, well. We can move on. Oh, let's get out. We'll move on. All right. Oh, okay. So DASH stands for Disability Awareness Starts Here. And this is a program that Heba experienced in the Boxborough public schools, and we do it here in Wayland, in the Wayland public schools. In the Wayland public schools, it's called Just Like Me. And what it is it's a hands-on sensitivity awareness program for elementary school students. It emphasizes abilities rather than disabilities. It encourages empathy and understanding in the children in each classroom. It fosters an atmosphere of mutual respect and friendship, and we try to eliminate fear and misunderstanding. Now, DASH, in the public schools, the DASH program covers not just autism, but hearing difficulties, visual impairment, and physical disabilities. And each unit is presented to a children's classroom they start in 2nd grade and they go through 4th grade. So in 2nd grade, you might spend a week learning about visual disabilities. In 3rd grade, it'll be hearing disabilities. In 4th grade, by the time they get a little bit older, that you can talk more about invisible disabilities like ADHD and autism. And each year, each part of this program is presented in a way that will help the kids understand, what does it feel like if I can't see? And one of the activities that we did in Wayland was to, every child was blindfolded and given a walking stick, a person who's blind who would have a walking stick, and they were led by another classmate all around the school, and the classmate who's leading them had to understand, well, what do I have to do to help this person move through this school? And they would talk about what worked, what didn't work, what did it feel like being the one who was blind and couldn't see where you were going. So you find activities that will help the child get just a little bit of an idea of what it feels like to have that challenge. And then that's what we're doing in the DASH program to help raise awareness. So we're going to be focusing on autism in our DASH program. We're doing it in the 5th grade next week. And we are, it's next week, right? And those of us we've all been trained on the various activities to lead the children in. And these activities are supposed to help them, be a little bit more empathetic and aware. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what they're going to hear when they come to classroom. And this is the sort of thing we're telling the parents about it, so the parents will know what they did in class. I'm telling you so that you will know what this whole thing is about as we introduce each chapter that we're going to do. And now is the time to ask questions, okay? So if you don't quite understand, what do I mean? What are we doing? But the first thing that happens in the classroom, and we'll ask servants in the classroom to assist us in some ways, but the first thing that we do is we introduce the kids to different intelligences. So we have a little script. Do you mind if I read that script to you so you'll know what they're going to hear? Okay, so this is what the 5th graders are going to hear next week. We use our 5 senses to take in information and learn about the world around us. Can you name the 5 senses? Go ahead. Can you name them? What are they? Seeing, hearing, touch, smell, and sight, yes. So these senses enable us to make sense of the words and the numbers that we see. They help us write and hear and understand what people are saying to us, what the teacher is saying to us, what our parents are saying to us. People learn and use information in many different ways, and when we learn, we show something that's called intelligence or smartness, we could even call it, right? How many intelligences do you think each person has? Go ahead, you can answer. Many? Okay, that's a good answer. All right. Let's talk about some of the different types of intelligence. We have the intelligence that allows you to do reading and writing, and that's being word smart, or what we might call verbal or linguistic intelligence. There's the intelligence that helps you to be able to play music or sing music. How many of you like to do that? Nobody? Come on. You're the 5th graders now. You need to answer. Okay. So that means you have musical and rhythmic intelligence because you're good at music, right? Some people are really good at playing sports, or they love to play sports and like to move their body, or they might like to dance. That's a kinesthetic intelligence. It's a special word that means moving, right? And there's sometimes people who are really great at doing puzzles or using numbers or doing math. And that's a type of intelligence that we call logical intelligence or mathematical intelligence. Can you imagine things? Do you like to imagine things or think about pictures and watch pictures? That's another type of intelligence, being able to understand what you see. It's called a visual or spatial intelligence. There's another intelligence of being able to work in a group, to be able to sit together with other people and do things together. How many of you like to do that? Yeah? When you work in a group and you can actually do that, you have interpersonal and social intelligence. That's something that we have a word for, right? And then if you understand yourself, you kind of understand what you can do and you're proud of what you can do yourself, we call that interpersonal or introspective intelligence. Those are all big words, but can you see how many different intelligences there are? There's so many different ways of being smart, being intelligent. And all of us have different degrees of those types of intelligences. And what we're going to do today is talk about people who might have different intelligences than we normally have, or they might do things in a different way, but we're going to help understand how all those intelligences can work together. That's the introduction of the whole session. And then they're going to divide themselves into 3 groups, and there's 3 little activities that they're going to do to help them understand autism specifically. So then we have another little time where we're going to tell them a little bit about what is autism. They're sitting in their 3 groups. The teachers in the classroom are going to be helping and sitting at each table with them. And in each table, the servant who's leading that activity is going to say this to that group. I'm going to say autism is something that makes some people's brains work in a different way. Not everyone with autism is the same. Some kids with autism might have trouble talking or playing with others. Other kids might be really good at certain things, like counting or remembering facts. And some kids with autism don't like to be touched. Others of them enjoy hugs. And some kids like to do the same thing in the same way every day. I mean, some of us like to do that too, but some kids on the autism spectrum really like things to be the same all of the time. That makes them feel calm and safe. Can you understand how it might make them feel calm and safe if everything is always the same and it's predictable? Okay, so it's important to know that being on that autism spectrum does not mean that this person is less smart. It just means they might have different intelligences. And we already know that there are many very intelligent scientists and musicians and artists who are neurodivergent and who are autistic. So everyone's brain is really special. And kids with autism are just learning and feeling it in their own way. Now, do you know what neurodivergent means? And if they don't know it, we're just going to say it means that the nerves in our brain are wired in a unique, non-traditional way. So a lot of us have our brain wired pretty much similarly, but if you're neurodivergent, it just means your brain is wired a little bit differently. And then we're going to have these 3 activities. The first activity is too many senses. Okay, can you see that? And that is where we read a story about Ron the frog at the pond. The class servants and the lead of the activity will be at the table with the kids. Let's say there's 5 to 7 kids at the table. We're going to tell them, I have a story for you. We're going to read the story, and afterwards I'm going to ask you some questions about the story. And while the story is being read, the servants are going to tap the chair repeatedly behind them, click their pen, start humming in the background, and doing other distracting things, okay? And here's the story. Ron the frog at the pond. Ron the frog is gray with yellow dots. He lives in the pond near our house. Every morning, Ron sits on a lily pad and sings, "Ribbit, ribbit," so loud we could hear him from the porch. He eats my flowers and mosquitoes that zoom near the water. I see him pop across the rocks and splash into the pond with a plop. One day I tiptoed to the edge to get a closer look. Ron blinked at me with big round eyes. He sat very still, then boing! He jumped off the stick. I reached out to my hand to catch him, but I slipped and splash! I fell into the pond. Ron didn't laugh. He sat on a rock and watched with what looked like a quiet smile. I climbed out all wet and muddy, but I still smiled back. And all the time, they're going to be having all this other stuff going on. And now we're going to ask the question, what color is Ron the frog? Did anybody hear? Oh, that was hard. Okay. What does Ron eat? What happened when the child tried to catch Ron? Do we know what happened? No? And where does Ron sit? On a rock. Yes, you got that right. That's great. Okay, so you start with different ways of presenting this story for second graders as opposed to fifth graders, right? But we will ask the same sort of questions, and then they'll realize that, okay, for someone, we'll explain, for someone who's on the autism spectrum who may not have caught all of that story because it requires hearing and understanding. It's a special intelligence to understand things, but also not to be distracted. And what was happening while I was reading? Oh, somebody was tapping my chair. She was talking and she was humming. You start to realize, oh, if you're on this autism spectrum, then it could be that some of those things are the only thing you can focus on and you just can't hear the story. And help them to understand, what does it feel like to be frustrated like that? Because a lot of children on the autism spectrum can be totally frustrated for most of their day because we aren't able to accommodate everything to their needs, right? That's the first activity to help build awareness and empathy. The second activity is called emotions charades, and for that one, we have a whole series of pictures of children with expressions on their faces, so showing a lot of different emotions. And what we will ask the children to do is to understand how nonverbal communication can be confusing and how it feels when people have to struggle to express themselves. So the card, there's going to be a timer. They are going to have actors and guessers. We divide the kids into two groups, actors and guessers. One actor will pick up an emotion card. He has to keep it secret. He looks at it, and without using any words or sounds, they have to act out what's on their emotion card. They have to try and act out that emotion. Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it happiness? Whatever. And then the guesser has 30 seconds to figure out what they're acting out. Now, this may work well, this may not work well, but we try to see what is it like to, first of all, they have to interpret what is the emotion that they're seeing, and then they have to act it out. And then they switch roles. They get to be both actor and guesser in this activity. And we have to tie it back to empathy with just a short discussion, asking things like, how did it feel trying to communicate without words? Because a lot of us are able to communicate things just by expressions, without words. We can make people understand that we're bored with something. Look at our body language can show what we are feeling, but someone on the autism spectrum may not be able to interpret that. And being able to understand that how you express yourself without words is a whole intelligence itself of understanding, and we need to understand when that's difficult. And you can say, some people, like kids with autism, have a harder time using or understanding these clues. How can we help them feel included? So we'll talk about what are ways to help your friends who may not get this. How do you help them feel included? And then the final activity is a social interaction puzzle, where we have a puzzle a picture that's been cut into various pieces. We turn the pieces over so they can't see the pieces. They're given 30 seconds to, amongst themselves, pick up the pictures and without speaking to each other, put the picture back together, put the puzzle together, not being able to speak to each other. And that's kind of an interesting group puzzle building exercise where they have to actually try to communicate without words again. But this time they're working together. They have to, both of them, they all have to come up with this picture in the end. And they don't know what the picture is. They have to be able to do this all without words. So we might say, which station, at the end of the whole time we're together, we're going to ask which station felt the hardest, which one was the easiest to do, which was the hardest, what surprised you the most about these activities, what might you do differently when your friend or a friend needs extra help, or if they need quiet time. How do we offer sympathy, empathy, tolerance, and Christian love to our friends who may be on the autism spectrum? So that's what we're going to do next week in the DASH program in the 5th grade. Yeah.
Is the setting of the class make difference? How would the best setting of the class do the training for that?
Well, because we have to do it in our classrooms, or I don't know.
No, I'm talking about they are sitting in rows and like.
No, they're sitting around tables, so they're going to be like together.
3 tables.
There'll be 3 tables, and they're going to gather as a little group around each table and have to do, that particular activity. It would be great if we had separate areas to do these in, so that they're not, because it could also be distracting to see another group doing something. You know what I mean? Yeah, so physically, the way we manage this, outside would be difficult, because there's more distractions outside as well, that people... Well, I don't know about the basement, but there's a lot of parents who hang out in the basement. I mean, we're going to try it in the classroom first. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Do you want to? I guess we were going to try and do it in the classroom this time and see. Yeah, at the same time, we need to have a meeting space for all the parents. We're going to try and speak with the parents on the same day. Yeah. Yeah.
It works.
The plan was that we would do this for every class who wants it.
Yes.
And typically, we don't do it in 5th grade. That's a little bit old. We want this to start young and early.
Yes.
So that kids start thinking about this idea of empathy and being a friend to our friends who are different from us. We want that to start early. In 2nd grade is a great time.
So could we create?
In Wayland, they keep going, yeah. Yeah, but the autism one is kind of advanced. So you don't start with autism in 2nd grade, really. You want to start and move through the grades. But, the way we do this in our community, we have to work that out. We have to figure out how that's going to work best. But we want to be able to do it.
Yeah, would love if we can schedule something for each grade that's age appropriate for the grades.
Yeah.
And even like the ones that already passed 5th grade and didn't get that awareness previously, maybe we can do it for them until we have done it for the younger kids and they are already aware.
Yeah. We do need additional help, because every time we do this, we need at least 4 or 5 people in the classroom to do it. And those of us who are doing it, we're also servants in other classes, so our classes have to be covered. So, yeah, Lillian?
What do you do with the autistic kids inside the class themselves? Are they included in the activity?
They certainly can be included.
Like we have cases in 1st grade, 2nd grade, so...
Yeah. In the public schools, the kids are sitting there right along with their friends, and sometimes, they take in what they can. Sometimes they become very much a part of it, and usually the students know that there's a person in their class who's maybe a little bit different than they are, and this helps them realize, oh, this is more about what my friend is experiencing. Maybe I can be better. But it's up to, if we find or we think that a child maybe would be disturbed by participating, we can talk about that. And
so should we give heads up to the parents?
Yes, I mean yes, I think we should tell parents that this is coming, and we are going to meet with the parents the day it happens. But if anybody has questions ahead of time, we're happy to talk to them. Yeah. So if it's a parent of a person of a child who's neurodivergent, we can certainly talk to them about what to expect if they want their child to be part of that. Yeah. And now this is something that Heba prepared for the parents. There's a lot of different reactions around neurodivergent kids, and we know, a lot of us know, have seen this sort of thing, or know that these are some of the ideas that people have, that, we want to, let's just ignore it, or we're going to pass judgment, tell our own kids, let's not be like them, right? or stay away and don't include them, treat them as if they have nothing to say or to add, stop your kids from befriending them, or say, oh, you know, that person just needs medication. There are so many things that we just don't know about each child, right? We want to hope that we can stop and move away from these kinds of judgments. And just remember that they are the perfect image and likeness of Christ, and they are in our family of God. So some of the things we hope that our kids will come away with, and that our parents and the congregation will understand, is that we should learn not to judge as much, embrace differences, be genuine and inclusive and patient, because, you know, this is what will help. And be an upstander, don't allow bullying. And that's one reason, too, that we want to start early when they're young, to help them realize that this is the way, you know, God created all of us in many different and wonderful, amazing ways, and this is not something we should hurt someone with as they get older. When they get older, you know, starting in 2nd grade, I think is a great time to start helping these people see that these children are just like me. It's called Just Like Me in Wayland, but here it's Disability and Awareness, DASH. They're just like me, and they want to have friends just like I do. They want to do things that they love to do just like I do. So those are, you know, some of our goals. Again, recommendations: don't judge, love and show respect. And we have lots of references if people want to learn more. Okay? Do we have any other questions or more comments? Yeah.
Can we have like also something, awareness for the kids? Yes. Can we have some awareness for the servants as well on like how we can deal with the kids in class? Because
Certainly.
We need it, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it's not easy. Part of some of the things that we have, the inherent nature of our classrooms, where we are putting 20 to 30 kids in one room, and we're talking a lot, and there's a lot of movement and things happening in each class. Some of that stuff is just not conducive to a wonderful experience for someone on the spectrum, or especially someone with sensory issues, right? So allowing that person to have headphones on, allowing them to sit in the back of the class if they want to. I mean, the other problem is, you know, if somebody feels like they need to move, you need to get up and move and walk around the classroom. That can be distracting for the other students, I know. So sometimes in the school, especially, and my son had a one-on-one person with him all the years he was in elementary school, they just took breaks. He would leave the classroom and come back in. If you have servants who are able to do that, walk out. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to go back in and, you know, do breaks. There are lots of things that we can offer to the servants, but right now I'm introducing what the DASH program is, and yes, we do need to have probably another session entirely on strategies for teachers and servants. Are we able to do that, Jackie? Hopefully we can come up with that.
Yeah. That would be my question. Would we have like workshops, training for that?
Mm-hmm.
For the
Definitely,
servants?
we need that.
I think that the worst thing, like before, servants were not acknowledging that the kids needs a break.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, oh, they're going to leave Sunday school. I think now there is a change. Like we say, if you think that the kids are fidgety, it's okay to let him out of the class for 5 minutes, send him to do something with somebody and come back. So I think the acceptance of somebody leaving was not there, but I think over the years we are accepting, all of us in elementary, that, right? We're accepting that the kids okay to be out of the class for a few minutes and come back or not come back.
There is, when we are more aware and understanding of why some of these behaviors come out, when difficult behaviors come out, it almost always has something to do with something that's wrong with that person. It's not that they're misbehaving to be bad in the classroom. It's because the tag on my shirt hurts me so much. I cannot sit here anymore, and I need to punch everybody around me. I need to bite someone. I mean, it's terrible sometimes. It can be bad, the kinds of expressions that come out, but it could be because they're just uncomfortable, or they can't find comfort and safe. They don't feel safe. They may feel, I don't feel safe. Everybody's sitting so close to me. I need to push and shove and get them out of my way. It could be that it's too loud in here. I need to shrink myself as small as I can get. There's so many different reactions to what's going on in someone's head, and it can express itself in a behavior that we, as neurotypical servants, don't like. It doesn't help our classroom dynamic, right? So we have to work on ways to find what works. And that's also one of the reasons we've been visiting families, to ask the family what works for this child. What does this child need? How does this child react in school? Can we do anything here for him or her? And yeah. So what do we do when the parents themselves are not when the parents themselves don't want to acknowledge that there's something different?
Which is clearly, it's clear to everybody that the child needs help.
I think people have fear. They're afraid of something being different, and they don't necessarily, they don't want to be stigmatized. They think, oh, everybody's going to think my child is different. But the earlier the intervention, the earlier we can start helping these children, the better. So in a way, it's not great for that child to not be acknowledged and not to be recognized as having a need that we're not dealing with, right? And this is something that clearly we need help. I mean, yes, and Abunas, you need to give us guidance too as to what we should do. Yeah.
I think not acknowledging, because there was one family, they are tired because they have been shoved in many places and they don't know what to do. So they don't want to hear it again from you. They want you to deal with something, accept the kids, and let them include it in a way how to deal with them. Because this is family, like the lady talked to me about half hour, like I'm tired. I went everywhere and no one wants to give me help.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come to her and say, oh, you're not seeking help, you're kind of giving her, I am seeking help everywhere, what else can I do?
Yeah, and families of these children are doing amazing work. I mean, they're working with their children day in and day out. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's so difficult. Yeah.
So I don't think anyone's like totally refusing it.
Yeah. And it can be incredibly tiring just dealing day to day.
Your group, this group here that's serving, is so beneficial. I want to say thank you for serving in this.
Thank you all for listening, and yeah.
Just two more questions in the back, and then we'll wrap it up if you don't mind. Just last two questions.
Okay. So thank you for this. And I believe you mentioned a very important point, which is assistance. To get assistance in class. I work at a public school, and I have 2 autistic kids in my class. Some days it goes very well, some days it goes very rough. We need to get them out of the classroom, and there is more than one person there. Assistant principal's there, I'm there, the teacher, and everybody, until we get them out of the classroom. One at a time, of course. So assistance is very important. I guess it's a question for you, Ted. Can we get assistance in the classroom, at least one adult who is trained, half trained, kind of, to assist only with this kid in case something happens. Maybe somebody from the prep class, I don't know who could that be, but somebody to help?
Yes, the answer is yes, but the question is the action plan on behind the yes. My experience is that we need to find the right person that the child can respond to.
Mhm.
It isn't just I choose or you choose. At the end of the day, we need to understand the child and what the child needs are. And I think that from, I could tell you that from not firsthand, but secondhand experience, my sister actually does similar to what you say. Understanding the mapping, the partnering between the specific child and the person, I'm not going to call him a teacher, but the person, becomes very, very effective, especially if that child begins to respond to the adult. That can be a very, very healthy, nurturing relationship. It can be amazing. So the answer is yes. The question is, how do we, amongst us as a church community, choose the right individuals to support that service? And we'll take it on. Okay. One final question, and we'll wrap it up.
You mentioned this earlier, and it leads to my question. And Tunt Sally actually kind of hinted towards it. Is there an appropriate way to ask the parents for what the school provides as an IEP and how we can use that in the Sunday school? Again, it goes back to whether the parents even acknowledge that their kid probably needs support or doesn't. But is there an appropriate way to get that sort of information from the school through the parents to be able to?
Well, legally, we can't get that information from the school, no.
All right.
But you can ask the parents, is there anything we can do to support your child? We've asked them, does your child have a diagnosis? Now, that probably depends on the family and how much we know them, but we can ask them if they have a diagnosis and if there is special supports that they get that we could assist with or that we could try to do in Sunday school. I'm sure a parent would be happy to know that we're thinking about that and want to help them. But I would say it in terms of, we want to help and support your child the best we can. How can we do that? What works best for him or her at home? What works best when they're in a classroom? Do they need to wear headphones? Do they want a social story to look at? Is it hard for them to focus on the story that's being told? There's all sorts of things we can try to offer, right?
I personally have so many questions, but we're not going to do it here. We're going to do a kind of potentially a write-up, and we'll kind of present it to St. Diffna servants. But this is not the end, right? This is just the beginning, okay? So let's stand up and pray.
And finally, Lord, make us worthy to pray thankfully, saying, Our Father, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil one. Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, power. Love God the Father, grace, only God, Son, our Lord God and Savior Jesus Christ, the coming gift of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Go in peace, peace, Lord, be with you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
She sent me the message last Sunday or what? ليه؟ هقول لها اوكي عشان اشتري مسج. Okay, Maria, عشان I sent it to her, he didn't. The second thing is someone of the parents نعمة بناني حاجات فقلت لها لا هتشوف 3 ايام وهتيجي الاسبوع الثاني فالولد يقول لها لا بيبقى متسرب.
All right. Thank you.